Hi student, how are you? Hope you're doing well. So in today's demo lesson, I'm going to explain the quadratic equations and how to solve them. So before learning how to solve quadratic equations, we need to learn and understand what is a quadratic equation, okay? So a quadratic equation is basically with the highest variable, with the highest power of the variable, that's 2, okay? So basically any equation of the form written here, this one, okay? So ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Any equation written in this form, in this type, that's called a quadratic equation, okay? And this form of the quadratic equation is called the standard form, okay? So it's called the standard form of the quadratic equation. Okay, so quadratic equation, if you learn more about them, is basically are equations that contain terms up to x squared. That means that in this quadratic equations, you will see that the highest power for the variable or for the quadratic equation is what? It's 2. So ax squared, if we see, the highest power is 2 here. That's why it's called quadratic, because of this 2. Okay, and next thing, if we learn about quadratic equations, is basically they're a type of polynomial equation, okay? And that's because they consist of 2 or more algebraic terms, okay? So that's why they are a type of polynomial equation, just like we have linear equations. So if you remember, linear equations are of the form ax plus b equals 0, right? This is like how we write linear equation. Okay, so linear equations are different from quadratic equations, and if you remember, linear equations are of this type, this standard form. That's for linear equations. The highest power or the highest exponent of the variable x is what is 1 in the linear equation. So if I write here, I'm gonna write that the highest power, it's actually going to be 1, okay? And in the case of quadratic equations, it's mentioned here, that's 2, okay? For example, any equation, if you see some equations written like this, x squared equals 5, okay? Now, this is not in the form of this. This equation is not in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, right? But it is still a quadratic equation. Why is this quadratic equation? It's quadratic equation because of this 2, okay? So it's quadratic equation because of this 2. So quadratic equations have, remember, the power 2 in them. Okay, that's the highest power of the variable. Next is this example here. Okay, so x squared minus 2x plus 1. That's again of this form, ax squared plus bx plus c. It doesn't matter if we have the negative sign or the positive sign. It's just that this is like a form of the quadratic equation which we have to follow when we are solving quadratic equations. Okay, next one is this example. Okay, this example, if you see, there's a little difference. So that's 2x squared plus 3x minus 2 equals 0. It's also of the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Just that we have used basically what we just changed the signs. So it doesn't matter what the sign is. It can be negative. Okay, it could be negative 2x squared, or it could be here negative 3x. Okay, and it could be negative 2, but it has to follow this form, the standard form. Okay, otherwise it's not going to be a quadratic equation. So that's the quadratic equation. Okay, next is how to solve quadratic equations. Okay. So to solve, there are 2 methods that we're going to see. First method to solve a quadratic equation is through factorization. Okay, if you remember a little bit, what's factorization? We make factors, right? So like, for example, if I write a number in front of you, let's say 10, okay? And I want you to write out the factors of 10. So you're going to say the factors of 10 are 2, 1, 5, and 10 itself, right? These are the factors of a number. But we are talking about the factors of quadratic equation. We have to factorize the quadratic equation. So how we're going to do factorization? Okay, let's use this example here. It says solve this quadratic equation. X squared minus 2x minus 24 equals 0, which if we see, this is of the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, right? Now I want to make factors for this quadratic equation. How I'm going to make factors? So to make factors, you have to see this c here and this a here, okay? So I need 2 factors, or you need 2 factors that their product, okay? You need 2 factors that their product is equal to a times c, meaning you need to multiply this a and c, okay? And their sum, which when you sum those factors, you get b. And do not forget the sign with b. If it's negative, then the sum has to be negative, okay? So their sum is equal to b. Now, if we see here, x squared minus 2x minus 4, oh, it's 24. X squared minus 2x minus 24 equals 0, right? So I want to look at this number here, minus 24. Do not forget the sign. And this coefficient of x squared, which is actually 1. So we don't write actually 1. We just write it as x squared. We just know that it's 1, okay? So 1 times 24. That's actually negative 24. Now I need the factors of negative 24, okay? Which when I multiply, it's negative 24, like it comes negative 24. And then I need this sum, minus 2, okay? I need this. So I need 2 factors for 24 or of 24, which when I do their product, which when I multiply them, I get negative 24. And which when I sum them, when I sum those factors, when I sum those numbers, I get what? I get negative 2. So like if I write out the factors of 24 are 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 12, and 24. Okay, so I want to see, like, I want to multiply 2 numbers that I get 24, and their sum is also 2, negative 2. So those factors will be 6 and 4. Okay, because if you subtract 6 from 4, you get 2. I want to get negative 2. Okay, so if I remember, I want to get negative 2, that's going to be negative 6 plus 4. From integers, it's going to be negative 6 plus 4, so that's negative 2. If you multiply negative 6 and 4, you get what? You get negative 24. So that's basically here, okay, in this quadratic equation, x squared minus 2x minus 24. Now I'm going to write this again because I want to solve this by factorization. Now I have found two factors, which are x squared minus 6x, okay? So if you say it's minus 6x plus 4x, that's going to give you minus 2x, right? And when you multiply them, minus 6x and with 4x, you get minus 24x squared, which is basically this thing here, this product here, okay? So my factors are, what? My factors are x squared minus 6x plus 4x minus 24 equals 0, okay? So do not forget the 0, the equality sign and the 0, okay? That's important. Then we have to factorize. We're going to have to take something common. So we're going to have to get common from here and then from here as well. And also do not forget the signs. Signs are very important when we are solving quadratic equations. If we forget any of the signs, the whole thing will be just, wrong, okay? So x squared minus 6x. If we see there's something common here, and whatever is common, we take it outside. So x and then x here. That means x, I can take x outside because it's common in both x squared and 6x. So it will be x times x minus 6, okay? Now I'm getting x minus 6 in parentheses here. That means from here, for x minus 24, I should get x minus 6 also, okay? So if I see, that's going to be plus and 4 times x minus 6. Why? Because 4 and 24, I have to take something common from here. Okay, I know that 4 times 6 is 24, right? So that's going to be 4 into x minus 6 equals 0. That's it. Okay, next step is to write out the common terms just one time. So x minus 6 and x minus 6, these are common. We're just going to write it like this one time, and then it's going to be x plus 4. And then set them equal to 0. This is how we factorize the quadratic equation, right? Then we just have to do what? We just have to use both of these terms and set them equal to 0 separately. So that's going to be x minus 6 equals 0, then x plus 4 equals 0. That's how we're going to do it. Okay, when we get two factors from the quadratic equation, like when we solve it through factorization, the process at the end is to set both of the factors equal to 0. That's why the 0 is here. Okay, it's to get the values of x. Okay, so when I set x minus 6 equals 0, that makes it a linear equation, right? And I know it's going to be x equals 6. Okay, and from here it's going to be x equals negative 4. So these are my two factors of x, or basically they are called the roots, okay? So roots of the quadratic equation, okay, or roots of x, which are 6x minus 4. So that's how we have solved what? We have solved the quadratic equation, this one here, by factorization and not by quadratic formula, which we're going to see in a little bit, okay? So that's the roots of x, 6 and minus 4. Next is to solve this quadratic equation, okay, through quadratic formula. Why do we use quadratic formula? You might ask this question, and it's a good question, because if we can do factorization, why do we need quadratic formula in the first place? So the answer is simple. Sometimes we have a quadratic equation which basically cannot have any factors. Like if you try to make factors, let's think for a moment if I can write any equation. This one, okay? If you see this equation, you will get to know that if you multiply minus 1, this one here, and this one here, you get minus 1. Now 1 is, it doesn't have any factors. Its only factor is itself, okay? So I cannot just solve this quadratic equation using factorization because I don't have any factors for 1, which when I sum them, I get negative 1, and which when I add or subtract them, I get negative 4. So that is why we use something called quadratic formula. That's why we use them, okay? That's why we have quadratic formula, so that sometimes when you get quadratic equations in front of you, which when you look at them and you say, oh, I cannot have factors for these. So that's when it clicks in your head that you have to solve it through quadratic formula. And the quadratic formula is very easy to remember. It's nothing. It's just this thing here, this part. So it's going to give you two values of x. Just like when you solve the quadratic equation through factorization method, you will get two values of x, okay? So from the quadratic formula, you will get, again, two values of x. Those will be the solutions of x, you can say, or the roots of x, okay? So quadratic formula is given by this x equals minus b plus minus b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Now, if you remember, what did we learn about standard form of quadratic equation? We learned that it's ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, right? And the signs don't matter. It can be negative and positive. It doesn't matter, okay? So what are these? These are actually, a is what? A is the coefficient of x squared. B is the coefficient of x. C is just a constant. It doesn't have any variables, so it's not a coefficient, it's just a constant. Now, these are what here in the quadratic formula above. These are this coefficient here, b. And then again, if you see a here, that's the coefficient of x squared. And then c here, which is this one, c, constant. Okay, again, a here is the coefficient of x squared. So that means if I write out this equation in front of you, x squared minus 2x minus 24 equals 0. Okay, I am going to assume for a moment that this is a quadratic equation that I cannot solve through factorization. So I'm going to use quadratic formula. How I'm going to identify a, b, and c? Well, it's simple. Well, you just look at the coefficient of x squared, x, and this constant here. Okay, so if you see the coefficient of x squared is what? It's 1. That means a is 1. Okay, you just have to compare them, right? Compare them. And then b is what? The coefficient of x is negative 2 here. So that means b is negative 2. And then if you look at the constant, that's c, which is -4. Do not forget the negative sign, okay, if it's present there. So c is -24. Now I want to solve this equation through quadratic formula. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use a quadratic formula, which is x equals -b plus minus. Plus minus is there because you will get two values of x, okay, remember. So b squared minus 4ac, this is going to be inside the square root, divided by 2 times a. And then what you have to do is you have to substitute each of the values of b, a, and c in this quadratic formula here, okay. Then only you can get the values of x, okay. So I'm going to substitute the value of b, which is -2. So negative into -2 plus minus b squared. B squared is going to be -2 squared minus 4 times a. A is going to be what? 1. And c is -24. Then divided by 2 times a. 2 times a is going to be 2 times 1 because the value of a is 1. Again, we're just going to have to solve this like how we solve any math questions, right? So simple. Negative into negative, that's going to be positive. So +2 plus minus the square root, and then inside -2 squared. So if you're taking the square of a negative number, it's going to be positive. That means it's going to be 4, +4. Then minus here, this side, and minus here. So negative into negative, it's going to be positive. And then 4 times 1, that's 4. And 4 times 24 is, let's say, 4 times 4 is 16. And then I think it's going to be 96. Yeah. So 24 times 24 times 4 is, yeah, it's going to be 96. Okay. Then 2 times 1 is going to be 2. Okay. Next is to solve this inside the square root. So that's going to be 2 plus minus. If we add 4 and 96, we get 100. Square root of 100 divided by 2, which is 2 plus minus square root of 100 is what? Square root of 100 is 10. So we're going to write 10 here divided by 2. Now, how will we solve this? We are going to have two values of x. So we'll say x equals is going to be 2 plus 10 divided by 2 because of this plus sign here. And then second one is going to be x equals 2 minus 10 because we also have to look at the minus sign. Okay, we don't have to forget the signs. We just have to use them. Okay, so that means we're going to have two x values, 2 minus 10 divided by 2. Next is just to solve them, and that's going to be x equals 12 divided by 2, and then x equals -8 divided by 2. Okay, and simple, that's going to be 6 because 2 times 6 is 12, and that's going to be x equals -4 because 2 times 4 is 8. So how many values did we get for the quadratic equation? Like when we use this quadratic formula, this one here. Okay. Okay, so we got two values. So we got 6 and -4, which is basically what? These are the solution of the quadratic equation, okay? So that's how we're gonna solve, okay? This is basically what? This is how we solve quadratic equations through factorization and quadratic formula, okay? Now this is one just example here, which I'm going to use to solve this quadratic equation, which is of the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. I'm going to use this and solve this by factorization, but I have to see if I can solve this by factorization. How? I want two factors, which when I multiply them, I get -6 because 1 and -6, when I multiply, I get -6. Then when I add them or subtract them, I get 1 here, okay? And positive 1 it should be. So let's see, the factors of 6 are 1, 2, 3, and 6. Okay, so I'm going to use 3 and 2. Okay, I'm going to say 3 times 2, that's 6. And 3 minus 2, that's going to give me 1. So I will have two factors. Okay, I've got two factors, that's 3 and 2. So that's going to be x squared plus 3x minus 2x. Because if you do plus 3x minus 2x, okay, you will get x, which is here, plus x. So plus 3x minus 2x minus 6 equals 0. Now I'm going to take something common from here, which is x from the first term. So it's going to be x plus 3. And then minus 2, and that's going to be x plus 3, okay? So because this minus plus is going to be minus here. So that's why. Okay, next is going to be x plus 3 and x minus 2 equals 0. And then set them both equal to 0 to get the values of x. So first one, the value of x is -3, and second one is 10, which is basically what? Which is the solutions or the roots of the quadratic equation, okay? So that's it for our lesson on the quadratic equations, okay? I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for watching.